Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu recently tweeted that Israel would not become a halachic state, meaning a state that is governed according to traditional Jewish laws. His tweet comes as Israel is headed towards a second round of elections for the first time in history, brought on by a stalemate over the Haredi draft bill, legislation seeking to draft ultra-Orthodox into the IDF. And as tensions are very high among the religious and secular sectors of Israeli society, here to discuss the issue of religious affairs here in Israel and the ongoing problems with regards to this issue is Rabbi Ariel Konstantyn, founding rabbi at the Tel Aviv International Synagogue and chairman of Metzion, the Institute of Zionism and Jewish Heritage. Okay, so let's jump right in. The issue of religion in Israel, or more specifically the divide between the ultra-Orthodox and the secular sectors of society, is something that's been ongoing for many, many, many years. So why has it come to the front now?
There's no question that elections stir things up, and that's often a challenge. We don't want to have elections that often because these things come to the forefront. What we want to do is be able to find solutions, and when in between elections, that's when solutions are being sought. But it's an issue. It's been an issue throughout Israel's history. The whole basis of Israel, there's a big debate whether it's founded as a nation-state of the Jews or a Jewish state. And I think that's a big divide amongst the Israeli population. If we're a nation of Jews, then we're a nation like all others. We just happen to have a Jewish majority and defend ourselves against external threats. But if we're a Jewish state, then the Judaism colors the character and the culture of the state. And then the question is, how far? As an American, we're very used to the separation between church and state and keeping them completely separate. But here, when you engage a Jewish state, by nature, that's mixed. Then the question is, how far does it mix? What part infringes on civil liberties and personal choice? And what part is part of the national character of the state that needs to be maintained so that we engage that Jewish part of the state?
And this is an ongoing debate. We've seen it with the Jewish nation-state bill that
Right.
recently passed. And, I'm curious because PM Netanyahu felt the need to tweet that Israel would not become a halachic state. Why do you feel that he needed to tweet this? Why did it need to be said?
Well, I think it was in response to what the Knesset member Smotrich said, that he wanted to become justice minister, and he declared that he's going to move Israel towards a halachic state, a state based on Jewish law. And that shook up a lot of ire on all sides. And Netanyahu stated very clearly, first of all, you don't have the job, and we will not move to a halachic state. Ironically enough, the Chaver Knesset, the Knesset member Gafni from the Ultra-Orthodox stated very clearly, we're not pro a halachic state either, coming from the Ultra-Orthodox movement. I believe that comes from the fact that they don't really believe in the state of Israel as the future messianic movement. They look at it as where they live. And they're not trying to move it towards a halachic state. That being said, there's a lot of infringement of on the population that comes from the ultra-Orthodox.
Right. I mean, recent reports in Israel have said that the ultra-Orthodox made a demand to the prime minister who gave in to this demand, and that was to allow for segregation of men and women, something which today is considered illegal. So what's your take on this?
So I think there's a multi-pronged approach to this. On the one hand, what they put in and proposed as part of the coalition agreement, if you read it carefully, it says that they wanted to have separation in public spheres not be illegal, okay, like you said. That being said, I think that if applied correctly, that can be more inclusive than discriminatory, meaning that if some believe that being in a mixed multitude of men and women of mixed gender areas is an infringement of their religious belief and therefore will not take part of a public ceremony, this can enable them to be inclusive, provided that there is a majority section of mixed gender that everyone could feel comfortable participating, but also then include those who wouldn't feel comfortable in that sector to be able to be part of it, but stand separately. Provided that it doesn't coerce on the rights of the others, it can be actually inclusive.
Now, the Ultraorthodox control nearly every aspect of Israeli life, right? Whether kosher food, getting married, transportation, whether stores can be shut down on Shabbat. I mean, in Israel, it sometimes does seem that this minority is actually controlling the majority. What are your thoughts on this?
Right. So there are issues in that regard. Again, it goes back to that same question of where do you draw the line between Jewish state and infringing on people's individual rights. And that line is often crossed. As an Orthodox rabbi, I am a believer that stores entertainment centers, let's say, even can be open, or busing should be provided for people who can afford a taxi or a car and get to visit family and friends, maybe on a weekend schedule, perhaps employing non-Jewish drivers so that the Jewish state is not forcibly employing people who are Jewish that would violate the Sabbath. But to provide those services, I think, is actually a necessity. Where, again, in the public sphere do we draw the line of Judaism? That's a big question. Marriage is a big issue. Who is a Jew is a big issue, and that also very much relates back to marriage. Kashrut, having monopoly on it, monopolies are never healthy. Providing competition enables different kosher providers or kosher supervisors to be able to provide in a better way, and that will improve everyone's kosher supervision, lower prices, and increase the services to the people. So whenever there's a monopoly, there's an issue. And there's a monopoly here, and the problem is that monopoly was hijacked, in my opinion, by an ultra-Orthodox rabbinate that doesn't even believe in the chief rabbinate. They go to their own badatzes, which is their own court systems. They get married. They don't get married through the rabbinate, but they're enforcing everyone else to. And that's where coercion comes in. That's where a very myopic view of Judaism is enforcing that view on the large population, and that needs to be adjusted.
And so what can be done to bridge this gap?
First of all, it was a shame that when Rabbi Stahl ran for chief rabbi, he didn't succeed. I think the choosing of the chief rabbi has to be widened and be more democratic to represent more the will of the people. That's one thing that perhaps can be changed if there could be some kind of an agreement of how the rabbinate is comprised of. I think we have to look to bridge secular and religious. We look to bridge the diaspora and the Jewish community. A lot of antagonism is being brought about these issues, and we see more of a disconnect from the diaspora to the Jewish community. There was just the American Jewish Committee study that 25% of Americans don't even care what happens in Israel and don't think that it will affect their destiny as Jewish people. That shows that the gap is widening, and this chasm must be filled by an outreach effort of saying everyone's included in this process. Jews are Jews are Jews. We welcome everybody. Let them express their Judaism as they see fit, and everyone can find their place within the state of Israel, their place within the religion. And this forcing a very narrow view on the majority is very, very harmful for the future of the Jewish people worldwide. And I think we need to raise our voices more to be a bridging voice.
Great. Well, Rabbi Ariel Konstantyn, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.